really enlightening morning. We've spent time with a truck driver describing what's going on in the trucking industry and her experience as a woman in trucking. We had a great roundtable conversation at Heartland about the EV training that's going on as we seek to build a workforce ready for the enormous number of jobs that will be created in the electric vehicle economy, supercharged by the president's bipartisan infrastructure law, and just had an opportunity here to see for ourselves not just the equipment but the students who are very much at the forefront of the electric vehicle revolution. We believe that there is a strong policy role to make sure that the EV revolution happens quickly enough to beat climate change, that it happens on equitable terms and benefits every American, and that it is a made in America electric vehicle revolution. And you see all of those goals at play in what's going on right here in the Bloomington-Normal area. This community and the state is, first of all, benefits from visionary state leadership, and I want to applaud the governor for not waiting for Washington, but rather taking action that we are now teaming up with when it comes to positioning this state to succeed in the electric vehicle economy and to make the kinds of generational infrastructure investments that are now going to be supercharged by the bipartisan infrastructure law. And of course, you were fortunate to have Senator Duckworth, who was on the Commerce Committee that has framed so much of our transportation policy, who among many achievements in this infrastructure law authored the All Stations Accessibility, help me out with what P is for in ASAP. The ASAP program, the All Stations Accessibility Program, which helps to make sure that transit stations will become ADA compliant, a huge and very important element of equity among the many things that she has shaped in our transportation policy. And of course, Senator Durbin, who in his leadership role in the caucus and in the Senate as a whole is one of those we have to thank for this historic bill. I don't know if anybody else wants to make any statements, or we can go right to questions. Governor,
happy to take questions.
Yeah, all right.
Go right to questions.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Mike Patika, Peoria Labor Paper. Talk about not just this electric vehicle, but about the whole infrastructure program, what it means not just economically, but socially to people.
Well, it's the reason it's called the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Yes, it's about infrastructure. Yes, it's about supply chains. Yes, it's about transportation. But the most important element across all of this is the human element. It's the jobs that it's going to create. It's the commutes that it's going to improve. It's the prices that it's going to keep lower because goods move more smoothly through our supply chains. If there's one lesson in the last 2 years, ever since we finally learned to use words like essential worker, it's that the most important part of supply chains is people. People like the truck driver that I was spending time with this morning. People like the workers who are going to really supercharge the economy in this area. And that's what this bill is all about. It's one of the reasons why we care so much that the transportation opportunities we're funding are American. The president has been relentless in talking about Buy America, Made in America, Base it in America, because this is about making sure the American people are better off. Transportation is everything. It affects our lives in so many ways, whether you work directly in a transportation-related job or whether you're just going about your life. And this is fundamentally about making American lives better.
Can I touch on that a little bit?
Please.
And the bill goes beyond just transportation infrastructure, but it goes into other infrastructure as well. As we've seen during the pandemic, it has broadband. Funding for broadband in it. It also has funding for water. I wrote the water infrastructure piece of the bill, the drinking water and wastewater piece. You know, it is long past time that municipalities can actually afford to fix their sewer systems and their water systems. And also, we need to get lead out of our drinking water supply. Illinois has exponentially more lead in our water supply than any other state in the union. In fact, we have almost 25% of the entire nation's lead pipes are in Illinois. And so that the comprehensive nature of the bill means that we have a lot of these projects. It is transportation, but it is also other infrastructure as well. Dick really led the effort on some of the vertical infrastructure, and it allows us to then turn to, you know, now this money is going to go out there, right? But if a state is not ready to act because the state didn't get its act in order in time, then we're going to miss out, because a lot of these monies are in grant form, and so the state has to be ready to act and apply and compete for these grant dollars. Do you want to talk?
Well, I appreciate that. I just want to point out that, as you know, we passed a massive infrastructure bill for the state of Illinois just 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And so we've been at this infrastructure business for quite some time now. CNBC's now named Illinois the #1 state in the country for infrastructure. And we are continuing to upgrade our roads and our bridges and our airports. But very importantly, as part of that, and as part of our climate bill, and then our REV Act focus on electric vehicles, we are making it easier for people to acquire an electric vehicle and to find a charging station across the state. And that's something that we intend to continue to do over the next decade. I think that over by 2030, we think we're going to have 1 million electric vehicles on the road in the state of Illinois. And let me add one other thing. The program here at Heartland is enormously important as an example of what we're going to be doing all across the state. We have 2 of these advanced manufacturing institutes in the state. And here it's a partnership specifically originally with Rivian to help train people to work at Rivian. But don't forget, there are suppliers, there are other manufacturers that are coming to the state of Illinois. There are battery manufacturers coming to the state of Illinois. So the robotics, the focus on energy storage, the focus on the gears we saw a little earlier for cars themselves. This is all part of what we're trying to get the workforce ready for, because these are great paying jobs and we're attracting them to our state now.
Mr. Secretary, the governor always talks about wanting to make Illinois the Silicon Valley of electric vehicles, and he mentioned some of the things that the state has done. I guess, how do you view Illinois in the national context in terms of electric vehicle space, especially in comparison to what other states are doing?
Well, what I'm really impressed by is that Illinois has not waited to begin to take the initiative on these electric vehicle policies. When you hear about, for example, the REV Act and the tax incentive that creates, that works in 2 ways at once. First of all, of course, it stimulates the purchase of electric vehicles, some of which, like Rivian, are right here in the area. Secondly, it empowers people who live in this state to be able to afford the vehicles, which in turn means they're going to save even more money from the gas or diesel and maintenance because they're cheaper to own. This is what we're seeking to do at the federal level too. And in partnership with states like Illinois, we're releasing $5 billion in formula funding to help make sure that we have that network of electric vehicle chargers so that you never have to wonder whether or not you'll be able to get a charge when you take a trip. Same as you never wonder on an interstate highway system whether there will be a gas station between you and your long distance destination. So it's very much about a partnership. Different states have different approaches, but I certainly admire the approach that has taken place in Illinois, and I think it's directly responsible for so much of the job growth that you see right here in this area in the electric vehicle space.
Mr. Secretary, Jack Alpert with Data Online. You mentioned climate change, and then we were just talking about the charge stations, the availability of charge stations. What incentives, if any, is the Department of Transportation giving to companies to make sure that those charge stations are based on renewables and not fossil fuels?
So ultimately, of course, the power is not equal in terms of how green it is, right? It really depends on the sources. But what we know is even the less clean power sources, it's still cleaner to run a car based on that than it is a car that's burning fuel internally. And so as our national energy mix becomes more and more renewable, it's only going to get better from here. But you go to another interesting point, which is standards for these EV chargers. We're not just going to send out a blank check and say, go do whatever hire anybody to put any charger anywhere. We're going to review the plans that the states come back with. They'll be due by August 1st. I have a feeling the governor wants to beat that deadline. And we're going to make sure that those are met with standards to make sure that the chargers are interoperable, that they're serving consumers well, that they meet those basic standards. Because if taxpayer money is going into helping acquire what's ultimately a private entity, it's got to be, or I should say, a private asset. It's got to be responsible, and we really care about the stewardship of those dollars.
Thank you.
Time for one more question, right?
Governor, the Secretary is ready to hand you a check for $22 million to start building out EV infrastructure in Illinois. Based on the plan that you submit, how close are you to getting something on paper that you know will be successful in getting that money and putting shovels in the ground to build after infrastructure?
Well, it's a process that we're already engaged in our Department of Transportation. We talked about it a little earlier today, we certainly want to be earlier than later, and we want to have the best plan that gets produced for them, because we want to see the dollars come in earlier. But it's hugely important for us. We've got to, in order for us to be successful in EVs, we've got to have charging stations everywhere in the state. So that's a plan that, as you know, we passed our climate bill and our REV Act just a few months ago. It's a plan that's been in the works for some time, but these dollars that are available for us to get directly from the Department of Transportation, this is something that we're going to be very aggressive about going after.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.